This is my December 2025 wrap up. Now, usually by the last month of the year, I'm pretty burned out. I think last year I read McGee books and not much else. This year was a little different because I found one of my favorite fantasy series of all time. So I'm going to save those for till the end, and we'll just talk about it at the end of my wrap up for this month. But before that, let's go through everything else I read in December. In November, my brain was a little broken after binging all the Vorkosigan stuff in October, but I was better by the end of the month, so rolling into December, it seemed like things were going to go pretty good, but I still wanted to start off with a reread, and I reread Pale Grey for Guilt by John D. MacDonald, the 9th book in the Travis McGee series. Next year, I'm just going to read the rest over the year and be done with them for the second time because they're all incredible. Pale Grey for Guilt is like one of the more mediocre ones. Like I said the first time I reviewed it, the biggest problem with it is the story revolves around John D. MacDonald flexing that he has a master's in business from an Ivy League school. And what that entails is the story is about white collar crime, specifically real estate crime. It starts with a murder and McGee wants revenge for what happened, and it goes to some very strange places. A lot of it is wheeling and dealing business stuff. There's a little bit of fraud going on the McGee side because he's essentially trying to scam the scammers, and I like it, but if you don't enjoy white collar crime, then you're not going to enjoy this book. It's, like I said, one of the more tame of the McGee stories. After that, I read Nifft the Lean by Michael Shea. Now, Nifft the Lean is a Dying Earth story. It never explicitly says that it's a Dying Earth story, but it's written in that same style that Vance wrote his stories in, and Michael Shea did write sequels to Eyes of the Overworld that involved Kugel, but then when Jack Vance went back to writing Dying Earth stories, the Michael Shea stories were removed from the canon. Nifft the Lean is awesome. Nifft the Lean is what would happen if someone as talented as Jack Vance put horror into the Dying Earth. Nifft the Lean is a framed narrative where a single person is collecting all these different stories about Nifft the Lean's adventures because Nifft the Lean is dead, supposedly. He does say early on that Nifft the Lean has faked his death before, so maybe he's still alive. We don't know. Each story was given to him by someone else. Some of them are from Nifft himself, and what he does is, as the editor of these stories, like putting them together to help remember Nifft, he rewrites them as stories. It's very Book of the New Sun in that way, that framed narrative where there's like a bias in how the stories are being told. The person compiling the stories even mentions that. He says, oh, this person, they're not outright lying about Nift's actions, but Nifft would never brag the way he does in these stories. And then the ones with actual Nifft telling the story, the guy's like, yeah, he's being a little humble in some places. And like I've said, he's not a liar, but some of this is hard to believe. I love that aspect of the story. Some parts of the story really drag in the same way that stuff does in like Rialto the Marvelous from Vance, where you're like, okay, we get it. You don't have to repeat that same thing again and again. But other than that, the book is incredible. I think anyone that has read Dying Earth needs to read Nifft the Lean. It's very, very good. The first story is a Dark Souls adventure. It's absolutely insane. I mean, a zombie woman crawls up out of the ground and she's beautiful and convinces you to go on an adventure that involves you traveling the underworld and bearing witness to horrific things and fighting gods. It's very, very good. It's one of those forgotten fantasy books that I think a lot of people should read. It's just hard to find, and if you find a copy, please get it and check it out. If you can buy it digitally wherever you live, do that. I can't. It's very frustrating. I can't even get the audiobooks legitimately, which just confounds me. I don't understand why a rights holder would think, you know what I don't need is money. I should just stop selling these because why would I want money? The digital content already exists. I don't understand why it's not out there. It infuriates me. Stuff like this is why people pirate everything. It's like, oh, you don't want to sell it to me? I will just get it by other means. Okay, enough with ranting about books that are difficult to find. Maybe I'll make a video about that at a later date where I just cry for 15 minutes about how there's a lot of really good books out there that I can't get legally. I did another reread because I wanted to put it in a video. And I also wanted to see if it was actually good because I loved it when I read it, I don't know, 18 years ago. That's How I Became Stupid by Martin Page. It's one of the smallest books I've ever read. It's like a novella or a novelette. It's tiny, and it is a translation of a French novel. It is a modern day Candide where the main character is tired of being smart. He is too self-aware. He knows too much about the goings-on of the world and the unethical things that corporations do, governments do, normal people do. He just wants to be stupid. The world is far too stressful, and he would rather be ignorant of these terrible things so he can have a chance at being happy. From the very beginning of the book, it says in the first chapter where he's planning out how he's going to become stupid, he says, I know this isn't going to work. By the end of this, I'll be back to who I was, and nothing will have changed, but I will have learned a lesson or not. And it's hilarious that he is self-aware enough that he even brings that up at the beginning. But he starts with, I'm going to be an alcoholic because, if I'm drunk all the time, at least people will pity me for my suffering instead of me just being smart and aware of all this stuff that gives me anxiety and makes me miserable. Nobody sympathizes with you if you're just intelligent enough to know what's wrong with the world. So I'm going to drink myself stupid, and then, people feel bad for me, and then I can have a chance at being happy because I'm too drunk to care. Well, that doesn't go very well for him. He finds out he's allergic to alcohol very quickly and tries to move on to other things. And every step of the way, it just gets more and more ridiculous. And it's like this thing where he finally makes himself stupid enough to not care, and while doing that, somehow becomes incredibly successful in the business he gets into by just accidentally meeting up with someone that does that, and it's ridiculous. He has just enough intelligence left to excel in this thing. It's a very good book. I think that the ending is not good. It's very early 2000s and involves a manic pixie dream girl, which is always stupid. And so I still really enjoyed it. It's a very short book. I would recommend it to just about anyone because it's a cool piece of literary fiction from the early 2000s that has a terrible rating on Goodreads. Go check it out. It's 3.39. And the weirdest part is the majority of the reviews are in Arabic. I just don't understand how the majority of the reviews are in Arabic. It's a French novel. It's just strange to me. This book has by far the most foreign language reviews I've ever seen, which makes sense as a French novel, but they're not even in French. All these reviews are in Greek and Arabic and Russian and Portuguese. So it did say it was an international bestseller and it's been translated into a ton of different languages, but why does it only have a 3.39? Why did it get translated so much if it's pretty low rated for Goodreads? I mean, below 3.6, the book is generally considered bad. So I don't understand. If I make a video about the lowest rated books on Goodreads that I've read, this would be on there, but it'd also be at the top of the list is the one I would recommend probably the most. I just found it fascinating. That's one of the reasons I ended up reading it again, was I saw how low the rating was and I thought, this book's not bad. I remember it being very funny, and I thought that a lot of the satire in it and political commentary was spot on. It's just as good today as it was when I read it, whatever it was, 18, 19 years ago. So yeah, How I Became Stupid by Martin Page. Very good. A few people in a book Discord I'm in were reading Lazarus by Leonid Andreev. And so I decided to, because it was a little novelette or novella or whatever. It's a very tiny story. Very good. It is about Lazarus, who is brought back to life. And I've seen online that he is considered the Edgar Allan Poe of Russian literature, and he wrote in the early 20th century. It's spot on. That book, that story does not read like something that was published 120 years ago. I really, really enjoyed it. It's very creepy. It's not as creepy to me as other people have said, and a lot of people have talked about the existential dread in it and the fear of dying and stuff, which stuff like that never gets to me, because if you're dead, you're dead. So I don't understand a fear of being dead. When I am dead, there is nothing. So why would I care about that cutoff point? Being horrifically maimed and almost dead, now that is nightmare fuel. Being dead doesn't matter, because you're gone. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing you'll remember. There's nothing you'll see. What does it matter? The existential dread of death doesn't bother me at all. And that's what this story is about. But I really enjoyed the other elements of the story and how it was written, and just understanding that this is a pretty old story by modern reader standards that holds up very well. So I recommend it to just about anyone. I think the best way to get a hold of it is in a collection of his stuff, or you can buy a overpriced digital copy on Amazon that does have a newer translation, so that's good. I can't remember what translation I read. I don't think it really matters as long as you're not reading some super early translation. Now, as all of you know, I'm a bit of a accidental stat patter. I was looking through all the Nobel Prize winners for literature that I have read, and it was a lot more than I thought. And I was thinking, let's just stack a couple more on there over the next few months because it's fun. And I read The Good Earth by Pearl S. Buck. This won a Pulitzer. She got the Nobel Prize for literature. This was in like the 1930s. She was the first American woman to win it. And the book is very good. So Pearl S. Buck grew up with her parents in China as Christian missionaries. And so this book is written in the style of like Chinese tales with like a detached narrator kind of looking down on the characters in a really interesting way. The closest thing to it that anyone that watches my videos will recognize is the Dandelion Dynasty. The first book has that detached narrator, very epic feel to it. And the reason why is they're drawing from the same source material, which is like very old Chinese stories. I think that she does a really good job of showing the common life of a Chinese villager 125 years ago, 130 years ago. Like a lot of this story takes place up to the buildup of Chinese Revolution of like the 20s and 30s. It's very good. It's very beautifully written. I knew the book was going to be good very early on. As soon as every time something started to change, I got anxious. Like myself, I was feeling the physical reactions to anxiety for the characters in the book. I was already just completely invested in them in the first 20% of the story. I think that it's very good. A lot of people have critiqued her nowadays because they're saying, why is this white woman writing about Chinese people and profiting off making a story about China? But she has nothing but respect for Chinese culture, and a lot of people consider this book, because it was so popular in the United States in the 1930s, this book was a catalyst for Americans empathizing with the Chinese during World War II, which, it's a lot easier to empathize with someone when you see that an imperialist nation is committing genocide in their country, but just to have that extra layer of empathy stacked on there because these people understand the plight of the people that are being tortured after Japan invaded them. So I can understand that. Like, I really don't see the other side where people are super critical of her writing about China. It's stupid. She grew up in China. She's telling stories about the people she knew from her time there. And she doesn't really even get into religion at all. So I don't understand where people's critiques of it is coming from. And for anyone out there, my litfic enjoyers especially, or anyone that's read Dandelion Dynasty, if you want to get into some literary fiction, go read The Good Earth by Pearl S. Buck. You'll fly through the story. It just reads like a dream. It's so smooth, and it's easily one of those literary fiction books that I would recommend. I want to make a video about like a hater's guide to litfic because I'm not the biggest fan of literary fiction. I'd rather spend all of my time in genre fiction, but there's literary fiction out there that works very well for genre fiction enjoyers, and this is one of them. It's a very good story. Now, the next one is part of the series I'm going to talk about at the end, so let's go past that to City of Dreams by Don Winslow. Hey, look, a sequel to one of the best crime fiction novels I've ever read, and this one was even better. I had all of the emotional weight from the first book, City on Fire, except now Don Winslow is just expanding on that. And this story is about Danny Ryan in California. He has gotten through the events of City on Fire, and now he's trying to pick up the pieces and make a life for himself and his son in a way that's not destructive like it was in his previous life. And, goes to some weird places. The cast of characters are fantastic. I think that, man, the way this is written is beautiful. This has to be a masterpiece of crime fiction. Like, I'm going to get into the sequel immediately after this. And let's just do that. The next one is City in Ruins, that finishes the Danny Ryan trilogy. It's incredible. This is the best crime trilogy ever written. I'm just putting it out there right now. If you can think of a better crime trilogy, let me know in the comments because I will read it. I love this. Don Winslow is a master of efficient, beautiful writing. No word is wasted, which when I get into the fantasy series I've been reading, that was like my only critique, is he tended to repeat himself. This does not do that. Don Winslow is incredible. You can't take a word out of any sentence that he wrote and the sentence still works. He has pared it down to the bone. It's so good to be able to take a story and just run with it this lean and it work this well is something special. I just can't get over it. I've been thinking a lot about writing lately, and every time I listen to an audiobook that he wrote or I read it on the page, I'm just blown away by how good he is. His mastery of the language is just something else. I got one last thing before we move on to the 6-book fantasy series I read this month, and that is Testimony of Mute Things by Lois McMaster Bujold. There is a new Penrick novella. I got 2 of them during my reading project, which is awesome, but also just added more books to the TBR pile. I didn't even know about it until the week it came out, and so I just added it to my phone and listened to it. It's okay. It is very Detective Penrick and Desdemona solve a mystery, which normally wouldn't bother me, but it just wasn't as good as the others. It's still very good. She's still the amazing writer that she always is, but I just kept getting distracted while I was listening to it, and not distracted by external things, just my mind would just check out because I just wasn't as locked in for this story. And I think part of it might be because it takes place right after Penrick's Fox. It's like an early story with Penrick. And I think the other problem is the story starts with a huge info dump of like geopolitical stuff that I guess matters but doesn't. By the end of the story, you would have figured it all out anyways. I don't think that it needed such a boring introduction to why Penrick was going to do the thing he was doing, but that's just me. I think it wouldn't bother me as much if it was already in the series and I was going through in the internal chronological order, which is the way to read them. Don't read them in publication order. Read them in the internal chronological order that is suggested by Bujold. But other than that, yeah, it was fine. Like, it wasn't the best and it wasn't the worst. I think that Masquerade and Lodi is probably still weaker, or maybe they're about even. They're still 3 stars, so like they're perfectly readable. It's not like it's bad at all. All right, now after that, I binged an entire series this month. I reread the first book, and then just between my interruptions for Don Winslow, I just put the pedal to the metal and read every book in Saga of the Forgotten Warrior by Larry Correia. It's incredible. It's so good. I have a review for the first book. It's one of my early videos, and I call it Modern Sword and Sorcery, which that one kind of is, because he's not fighting for the fate of the entire world. It's a very localized thing about Ashok Vidal, the main character in the story, but the rest of the series is just full-blown epic fantasy. And I have been thinking about how to describe this for a while, because there's a lot of incredible world building that I don't want to spoil, but I think that you can catch on early enough in the story that the things I'm going to talk about aren't going to spoil any of that world building or spoil the plot at all. So the best way to describe Saga of the Forgotten Warrior is, what if we had Roger Zelazny's Lord of Light with its blending of fantasy and science fiction, and we combined it with the Dying Earth in a post-apocalyptic setting where the main character is essentially Judge Dredd, but Judge Dredd has figured out the law might not be all it's cracked up to be, and he gets released into this place and wreaks absolute havoc on all sorts of bad guys. I'll kind of go through each one and talk about what I liked about it. I'm not going to spoil anything. The first one, Son of the Black Sword, like I said, it reads like modern sword and sorcery. Larry Correia is the best at action scenes, and the black humor in this is very, very good. I've read the first book twice now, both times absolutely enjoyed it. The premise of the entire story is we are following Ashok Vidal. He is a protector of the law in the country of Locke. It takes up an entire continent on this planet where demons come out of the sea. Demons are these almost unkillable monsters that just will wreak havoc, eat humans, do whatever, and then go back to the sea. And the story behind them is, in ancient times, the king of mankind came from the skies and helped humanity force the demons into the sea, and a balance was created. The demons owned the sea, which a lot of people call hell, and the humans controlled the land. And one of the things that were left behind were black swords. They're ancestor blades, and these ancestor blades contain all of the memories of every fighter that has ever wielded the blade. So yes, we have sentient swords, which is one of the best tropes in fantasy that never gets used enough. So we have sentient swords, evil wizards, shapeshifters, demons that come out of the sea, just everything you would want in an awesome fantasy, on top of just over-the-top action that is wonderfully written. I just really, really enjoyed the book. I think that Son of the Black Sword works really well by itself. It does setup stuff for the later books, but you can just read it and then kind of hold off on reading the rest like I did. I only reread it again because I really wanted to. That's how much I enjoyed it. I'd read it about 2 years ago. And so I started with that and then moved on to House of Assassins. Now, House of Assassins starts like a little slow. The story is Ashok is trying to get back someone that he was in charge of protecting and everything that goes into that. I really can't talk too much about the rest of the series, but I just want to give my feelings on each one so that people know it's worth reading all of them. House of Assassins is very good. I think halfway through I was like, I don't think this is as good as Son of the Black Sword, and then it is all gas, no brakes for the last third. The story flies off the page, and I loved every second of it. There's crazy emotional highs, crazy emotional lows. If you like heartfelt action, then you will really enjoy these stories. They read like action thrillers mixed with epic fantasy. This is literally what I would like to write if I was a fantasy writer. There's an Erickson quote from an interview where he says, the only way you're going to get the exact fantasy story you want to read is by writing it. And I think he's still right, but this comes the closest I have ever read to exactly what I would want to write. There are things in it that I think are a little more craftsman-like in their style of writing and less artist, and that's fine. It's perfectly okay to be a very good artisan and not an artist, because I would rather see a successful artisan over a half-assed artist. And so the craft of the writing in here is very good. I don't think it hits the same highs as some other authors in the genre, but the other thing is it doesn't hit the same lows as those artists, and the books actually came out. The series is done. You can start them and finish them, and they were written in like a decade, something like that. 6-book series in a decade. Amazing work. These books are not some light, easy read either. I've noticed recently that a lot of people are really dismissive of certain authors, thinking, oh, they're just writing schlock, or they're just writing generic fantasy that doesn't have any underlying themes or anything like that, or they think, oh no, this is like a popcorn read, I don't have to really think about it, I can just read it, which you can do with this, but there's so many undercurrents to it. I mean, we're talking about, I think one of the major things I noticed in this series is how an authoritarian regime has no respect for the life of the individual. And another big thing is how quickly a state will lose its mind when it no longer has a monopoly on violence. It is crazy how swift and how terrible this government can be when it realizes it no longer has the monopoly on violence and people have the ability to tell them no. It's just really good. I think that if you want to read this for just it being a very fun story with a really good cast of characters. I've only mentioned Ashok, but Jagdish is one of my favorite characters in fantasy now. He is amazing. He is part of the military caste in this caste system, which I forgot to mention. This has a caste system. The entire series is heavily inspired by Indian folklore and Indian culture. And that's why I bring up Lord of Light, because it really feels like the ship that brought them here was the Star of India, which is at the beginning of Lord of Light. There's a lot of this undercurrent that you see in Roger Zelazny's Lord of Light. Are these books similar in any way? Absolutely not. Other than this influence of Indian culture and this blending of fantasy and science fiction. The world building in this is S tier. I can't even think of other people to compare it to, because it's just so good, and at times it's so subtle, and you just end up pausing your audiobook or you stop reading and you just think about it. I think I'm getting off the rails a little, so let's keep talking about these stories. The next one is Destroyer of Worlds, which I think is the weakest in the series. I think my problem with it was the pacing was a little off, and a couple of the bad guys feel kind of cartoony at times, not in a way that ruins the story, just in a way where I'm like, all right, man, come on, let's go back to the stuff I want to see. I think that might have been the other problem, is it's like it's got some very high highs, both emotionally and in the how well the story is being told, but then at other times, this is when I started to notice sometimes that Korea repeats things as early as the next sentence. I don't have an exact example, but to give a fake example, it'd be like he pulled out his sword and everyone around him knew that this sword could destroy anything that touched it. And then the next sentence would be, he swung the sword that could destroy anything that touched it. And it's like, you didn't have to say that. That's like a terrible example. The majority of them are just subtle and you don't really notice it. But the few that stand out, I was thinking, why did he say that twice? And so this one was when I started noticing that, and I noticed it in the rest of the series, but the rest of the books are all 5-star reads, so it doesn't really matter. Another plot in this entire series, which you get early on in the first book, is the moral repercussions of committing genocide. So this has some very heavy subject matter throughout this, and I think he does a really good job of showing how easy it is for a group to dehumanize people to the point that they don't see them as people, and creates a really slippery slope where you can convince the majority of a country to think, it's okay if these people are gone. Like, they're not people, they're just property, and it's awful. It's so crazy that a series that is built on black humor and sword and sorcery action scenes with a very badass main character can cover such heavy topics. And the next one in the series is Tower of Silence, and Tower of Silence is the beginning of the end for this series. You can tell that this is the book that was building up to the final book, which was supposed to be book 5, and then he had to write 2 books because the books on average are like 160,000 words, which on audio is like 16 hours or something. And then the final book ballooned to the point that he had to cut it in half, and he cut it in half in a good way. The last 2 being Graveyard of Demons and Heart of the Mountain. Graveyard of Demons has an okay ending because it's not really an ending. It was supposed to be the halfway point in the final novel, but it does end in a way that makes sense. And the next one picks up right where the other one left off, and Heart of the Mountain is so good. Heart of the Mountain starts off swinging and never stops. It's so fast paced. You rip through it. I loved every second of it. I think that he did an incredible job of wrapping up this epic fantasy series in a way that gives the reader the opportunity to think about how things are going to be in the future. He even kind of teases at it a little, and you get closure for everyone. I think that's one of the things he said is the final book ballooned into 2 books because he was giving closure for everyone. He wanted the reader to finish the series and be like, cool, I got closure for my least favorite character, my most favorite character, and everyone in between. He talked about it on social media somewhere, saying that he wanted to make sure that this series was done and done right, and he did it. What's really cool, though, is the very end, the epilogue, does leave it open, not for sequels. It leaves it open for the reader to think about how things have changed, because you get a glimpse of far into the future, but you don't get a glimpse of anything except a very narrow focus on a single character in a small place. So you can't think, oh, are they in the future now? Are there spaceships? Are there magic wizard spaceships? Or are all the demons gone? Or what is happening? I really liked the ending. It kind of felt a little corny when I first finished it. I thought, oh, that's really adorable and really cool, but I would have wanted more. But now that I'm reflecting on it, even just a couple days later, I really liked it. I think that this is an amazing epic fantasy series. It is complete. I would recommend it to just about anyone. I think that if you are very big into heavy themes and prose over everything else, then this might not be for you. But anyone that wants a very easy to read series with very likable characters and very cool world building, you will enjoy this. I'd be hard pressed to think of people that wouldn't like it. The lowest grade for any single thing, like prose or theme or character development, dialogue, stuff like that, would be a passing grade, at least. There's nothing bad in the books, let's put it that way. And I think he does handle a lot of stuff with grace. One of the best things is this book does not have damsels in distress. One of the main characters, she ends up being a damsel early on, but is by far one of the most competent people in the series. And this book does kind of have a hyper masculine bend to it, but I mean, we're talking about a hyper masculine culture in the series. The female leads in it are some of the strongest characters in it, and they're not strong because they're like a man. They're strong because they are very intelligent, capable women. It's very good. I've been talking about this for a very long time now. My throat is beginning to hurt. So the TLDR is Saga of the Forgotten Warrior. Very good fantasy series. Must read for anyone that likes action and world building. And it's done. It's complete. You can read them all. So let's move on to what I'm going to be doing in January. So what I'm going to be doing in January is starting a new reading project. I'm about 90% sure what my reading project is going to be, but I'm not going to tell you here because I haven't decided yet, but it's going to be a good one, and it's not going to be a single author. I do have some stuff queued up already. I'll just start from the beginning. I'm very tempted to read The First Man in Rome by Colleen McCullough because it is being read in Alan's Discord, Library of Alexandria. I've been wanting to read it for like a year now, and I just haven't had any motivation to do it. Maybe that can be a catalyst to get me to read this ginormous book, even at 1.3x speed, which is what I listen to audiobooks at. It's 30 hours. And yes, I do have the full audiobook. That goes into the subject of things not being available for really stupid reasons. I've been reading a Frederick Brown biography, but it's not so much a biography as it is like a bibliography. What is it called when someone writes a book about someone's book? Is it a bibliography? The beginning of the book is a biography, followed by a breakdown, not quite decade by decade, but kind of year by year or chunk by chunk based on kind of how it works out of his writing. I'm going to call it a bibliography. And the book literally does not show up when I try to Google it. This is getting annoying. I don't know how I can write Frederick Brown biography book and then get absolutely nothing. It is called Martians and Misplaced Clues, The Life and Work of Frederick Brown by Seabrook. You can still buy it new. It's really good. It started as a master's thesis for a literary degree by Jack Seabrook, and it got expanded into a book. I think he does a really good job of doing little short summaries of the most important stories and the worst stories of each era of his writing. And he's doing a really good job of building this idea in your head of Frederick Brown as a writer and a person. And with that in mind, I have the Fabulous Clip Joint and What Mad Universe on my phone to listen to, because they're both very short audiobooks with good narrators. And I think the Fabulous Clip Joint is the first in a series that involves 18-year-old Ed Hunter and his uncle, and they are investigating his father's murder in 1940s Chicago. It is an award-winning novel. It's one of his earliest novels, and I'm really looking forward to it. And What Mad Universe is his first science fiction novel. It is a satire of all that atomic era science fiction. It's like male wish fulfillment science fiction, and he's kind of making fun of it, which is a thing that he does very well. Martians Go Home is ridiculous, and he does a really good job of making fun of all the alien invasion UFO craze of the 50s. So I'm really looking forward to both of those. They're probably going to be palate cleansers between big books alongside, what else did I put on here? I got about 12 hours of Roger Zelazny short fiction that I'm going to listen to as well, because man, that man can write some short fiction. Stainless Steel Leech, must read by just about everyone. Never knew that I would openly weep over a story about a vampiric robot. Very short too. I mean, I think it's like 7 minutes on audio. It is a tiny story that everyone should check out. And beyond that, I've got the next 2 Zelazny novels, The Dream Master and Damnation Alley. I'm reading his books in chronological order now, because why not? I've already read all of the Amber series. I've read all the heavy hitters, Lord of Light, This Immortal, Creatures of Light and Darkness. So why not just go back to the beginning and work my way through the rest? He's one of my favorite writers of all time. I don't know what I'm going to do for nonfiction this year. I obviously did not meet my goal in 2025 of 20% of my reading being nonfiction. I'm going to have to figure that out as things go, or as I make my wrap up for the entire year. Other than that, when it comes to the channel, I got a pile of books I got for Christmas, so those are going to be in a book haul video. I need to do my tier ranking for everything I read in 2025. I'm not going to include rereads on that, but it's still going to be like 100 books or 110, not really sure. So we got a big tier list, so that'll be fun. And like I said earlier in the video, I kind of want to do a hater's guide to literary fiction. Let me know in the comments if that would be something that y'all would want to watch. My plan is to talk about things like that Pearl S. Buck novel, and how if you've read Dandelion Dynasty and you wanted to read literary fiction, this has the same style as the first book in that series, so you might enjoy it. Or if you like Red Country by Joe Abercrombie, you should have read Lonesome Dove by now, but if you haven't, hey, look, there's literary fiction you should be reading. Things like that. I want an easy way for genre fiction enjoyers to get into literary fiction in a way that's not up its own ass like a lot of literary fiction is, because it's just not fun. It's either trying way too hard and not succeeding in telling a good story, or it's just like crap that isn't fun. Like, I enjoy reading some things that are gut-wrenching or very emotional, but you don't have to beat me over the head with sadness. I don't understand why so many people equate literary fiction to depressive episodes. But maybe I'll get into that rant in an actual video about being a literary fiction hater. Let me know in the comments what you read in December and what are your plans for January. I had a pretty good booktube year. I would like 2026 to be better, and so I'm looking forward to filming videos and talking to everyone about books. Thanks for watching, and with that, I'll see you next time.